It's called the Lemhi Model Watershed Project, a cooperative venture that involves ranchers, fisheries biologists, soil conservationists, and a number of state and federal agencies. The program began in 1989, well before salmon were protected under the Endangered Species Act, because these folks wanted to do something active to protect the salmon.
Tell you the truth, first time I thought anything about any of this, I was over here haying one day and I got to thinking about my dad liking to catch fish. It was a year after he died, and thought it was a shame there weren't any fish. Like I say, I'm not much of a fisherman, but I'd like to see him there. If my kids wanted to fish, I'd like to have them have the opportunity, but there's no opportunity now.
As many of you know, the once legendary salmon runs that used to choke Idaho's rivers during the summertime are plunging toward extinction. Historically, the Lemhi River was a very productive spawning area for salmon. Anglers used to catch these impressive lunkers by the dozens. At one time, over 1,700 pairs of Chinook salmon spawned in the Lemhi River in the early 1960s. Last year, however, only 23 pairs spawned in the stream, and this summer, the Lemhi run may be reduced to single digits. Most people agree that 8 dams on the Snake and Columbia rivers are responsible for wiping out the salmon.
Those dams are responsible for about 95% of all the man-caused mortality on Snake River salmon. There's so much money involved here. There's so many utilities and aluminum industries and waterway transportation people and corporate irrigators that are making billions off of the use of the Columbia and Snake Rivers and at the expense of the fish. And they basically have taken the federal agencies, the Army Corps of Engineers and the Bonneville Power Administration, taken them hostage. And you can't tell the difference now.
But even so, ranchers have decided to do their part to improve salmon habitat on the Lemhi River because they want the salmon back.
Heck, I used to come down here and chase fish all the time. I mean, salmon was part of our big deal when we was kids. We used to come down this big pool here, them fat salmon would lodge in here, and man, we'd ride them and chase them and do all kinds of fun stuff.
One of the most important aspects of the Model Watershed Project is called the fish flush. From the top of the Lemhi Basin to the Salmon River confluence, ranchers are adjusting their irrigation practices to ensure that a minimum flow remains in the river for salmon, both juvenile fish and adults. In the past, particularly in dry years, irrigation dried up the river, and the salmon had nowhere to go. The new system works like this. Ranchers in the high reaches of the basin start diverting water into their pastures in March to saturate the valley floor and raise the water table. As time goes on, ranchers further down the valley also divert water into their pastures and raise the water table. Once the valley is fully saturated, the water table rises, and so does the flow of the Lemhi River, and then there's enough water for the fish to migrate in and out of the basin.
Most of this water is coming from recharge, from irrigation water being put on the ground up above the valley here, and it fills the whole aquifer on the Lemhi, and you have this kind of recharge that'll get back to the river, and this is what keeps our river full all summer long.
To make the program work, ranchers have to turn off their irrigation diversions every several days to keep water in the Lemhi for salmon.
25 and 41.
The watermaster keeps a close watch on irrigation diversions to make sure the water is available. But none of the ranchers say it's a big sacrifice.
Of course, you kind of take a little bit more thought at what flow is in the river and try to either start your water early or stagger everybody to turn on. Now everybody's trying to get turned on in April and earlier and staggering it to where there's water is on, instead of everybody just turning on in one day and drying the river plumb up.
Coming up next, more on saving the salmon in the Lemhi. A second keystone to the Lemhi Model Watershed program is the screening of irrigation ditches to prevent salmon from swimming into cow pastures. The screening program started in the late 1950s, but the old screens were not very efficient. The new screens are very high-tech and very expensive. They cost several $1,000s to build and install, but they're 99% efficient in saving fish.
This is a new fish screen on tributary to the Lemhi River. It's replaced an old screen where we reduce the approach velocities to no more than 0.4 of a foot per second. We have a bypass pipe on the left-hand side to funnel the young fish, the salmon, steelhead, as they're coming down the ditch here, and they can't physically go down the ditch because of the screen, and it puts them into a bypass pipe and passively moves them back to the river.
The fish screens are built from scratch by Idaho Fish and Game Department personnel in salmon. It's a big job. Nearly 30 department employees work on building and installing fish screens in the upper Salmon River Basin. They build about 40 of them per year. In the Lemhi Basin, 75% of the irrigation diversions are screened. And in the whole Salmon River Basin, 77% of the diversions are screened. It's an expensive program with a budget in excess of $3 million. But at this point, when the fish runs are severely depressed, every fish counts.
The older style screens, and there have been few evaluations done, but up to 85% of fry lost at the old perpendicular style drum screens.
Beyond the fish screening effort and water management, there's a lot of other work going on in the Lemhi Basin to save salmon.
It's still an average depth
A
of
crew of fish
2
biologists
feet.
recently conducted an inventory of the Lemhi River to evaluate fish habitat.
We're trying to quantify the habitat components of the stream, like pools and riffles and runs. This will help us identify the amount and frequency of different habitats that the salmon and other resident fish and steelhead also will use.
Once the inventory is complete, a number of habitat improvement projects will be identified and funding will be sought to enhance the fish habitat of the Lemhi. How ranchers manage their livestock has a direct bearing on fish habitat and salmon production on the Lemhi. At the expansive Powers Ranch, where many of the salmon spawn, the family has taken great pride in protecting the riparian habitat along the stream. A key to their success is the use of federal grazing allotments. In early May, they drive their cattle into high country, and all summer long, the river bottom is rested from grazing.
Well, I think right now with the issues that are at hand, we all have to do the best job we can. And we all are concerned about the fish and just doing the general management of our grasses and our fields. I mean, if we can't let this kind of stuff deteriorate because it doesn't do anything but hurt us.
90% of the fish habitat is on private ground. So we need to take care of that. And the only way to do that is to be able to turn out on the public lands.
All of these folks working together to improve salmon survival in the Lemhi are proud of their efforts. Ralph Swift, a soil conservationist, is the project leader. He's the glue that holds the whole project together.
The key is the cooperation between all the agencies and the private landowners and education.
What we're seeing on the Lemhi is the beginning of a real grassroots effort. That's the people who actually live off the grass, the livestock operators. But they're also beginning to form, in my view, perhaps most importantly, political force on the ground level to work against those federal agencies that are trying to kill all these fish off.